What's up, guys, and welcome back to another HRK vlog. So recently in the shop, it has been absolutely disgustingly hot. Let's take a look. Oh, it went down. It was 106.2, but we're coming down a little bit. Now we're at 106. So I do have to be out here for just a little bit because I'm working on this little guy right here, which is part of the window tracks for the Impala. So let's go into the office and take a look at what we've been working on. All right, so because of that heat, Pat and I have decided to bring our work into the office, which is the only air-conditioned place in the whole entire shop. So what we've been working on, I think in one of the last videos I mentioned the Impala windows. So what's unique about these windows is they're going to be powered windows, and they're not going to be crank like the old school ones. So what we have over here, we have this whole switch system. Pat's grabbing this right here. So this is the window powered mechanism right here, and then this guy right here is a really cool little feature. I'm sure some of you guys have seen these. So our stock window crank will be able to attach to this right here, and then actually, why don't we just plug this in real quick, because Pat just got this thing unplugged and had a hell of a time doing it. So I'll plug it back in so you can see how it is. Plug this into here, and then we have our ground right here. Boom. We got our power here. That. All right, ready? Make some magic happen. Show you guys this. Look at that. So this is a universal kit, so we have to, of course, do some, gosh, that lithium grease stinks. We have to do some modifying to it. So kind of how this works is, this guy will bolt onto here, just like this. And then there's a little track slider. So this little guy right here is a little slider. So it goes onto these posts right here. So when the window goes up and down, it's able to slide back and forth like this. And the reason that that's necessary is this window, the bottom stays completely level, but it goes up at an angle like this. And so in order for it to be able to go up at an angle, this slides back and forth like this. Now what the window kit wanted us to do is it wanted us to put the glass into this track right here. So then this right here, bolt onto this, and then you could put your piece of glass directly into this with the little felt pieces that they provide, and it would go up and down. The reason we can't do that is because our Impala windows, if we look at this right here, this is our old window. We got the new ones from Classic Industries right here on the ground. So it has this trim piece right here. This is upside down. I guess I'll do it like this so it makes a little bit more sense. So when the window's all the way in the up position, this piece of chrome trim is shown, and so we don't want to have this ugly looking thing coming up and being able to see that. So what our plan is right now is we will cut off this old piece right here for the scissor track. We'll leave these two little guys right here, and then we'll take a piece of flat bar, little just 3/4 inch to 1 inch wide flat bar that we will weld onto the bottom of this flat. So then that way, with the two little holes in there, it'll be able to bolt up kind of like that, but it'll bolt up onto the bottom of the flat bar. So before we go cutting and modifying our brand new windows, we're going to use this old window, and we're going to cut up into this one, and we're going to modify some stuff in here to make sure we can get it all to work, make sure everything will fit. Anything that we miss like that, then we'll do it on our final window. So we're basically using this just like in metal shaping when we use a cardboard template, except we're using the old window as our cardboard template. So I have to go brave the 106-degree heat for just a little bit to make a modified piece of flat bar to fit onto here, and then I get to come back into the AC and we will continue to make this work. So it's the next day, and we've been working on this window mechanism, and we are having some problems. So this was a universal kit, but I don't think it's going to work, because what we were talking about before, where the window kind of slides up and kind of goes at an angle like this, I think that's what we're having problems with. Excuse me, because it keeps binding up. I think this thing is plugged in, so you could probably try it here. Binds up. And if you notice how that is moving a lot, before with the original style, it would have been a scissor track, so it would have been lifting on each side, lifting it up kind of evenly. And so we did a little bit more looking, and it looks like these guys have a kit as well. It's a little bit more like that, where it kind of lifts in that kind of scissor type motion. So that's probably something more of what we're gonna need. And this kit that we got here might not work. So I called the manufacturer of the power window place. The technician's gonna get back to me, and then we'll figure out where we're at with that. But until then, we're kind of just on a pause until we can figure out what we need to do and what's gonna work. But we have some other updates on my F100, so let's go take a look at that. So as you can see out here, we have a giant mess in the shop. So we have been working on everything that we're going to need to do to be able to fix my axle with the kingpin issue like we talked about last week or a couple weeks. I think it was last week. So we were talking about sleeving it, but after talking to the machinist, he was thinking it was gonna be at least $500 to fix it. It was just a little bit more than I was wanting to spend for just a temporary fix for an axle that I'm not going to keep in there for very long. But we have this frame right here. This is a 1956 F100 frame from one of my customers. Has a stock front end, and he's also planning on doing a Mustang 2 front suspension. So he's not gonna need the front axle anymore. So we did some research, and we used some ChatGPT, which will bring us into the topic of this video: can AI restore my car? Because here recently we've been using some ChatGPT features. So when we did that, and obviously you can just Google this stuff as well, but what I found with the ChatGPT thing is where Pat is really good at Googling stuff and finding articles, and so that's what we rely on him a lot for. But you spend a lot of time searching through all these old forums and stuff and doing all this research, going through the ham, that kind of a thing, to try and find your answers. And the thing that pisses me off about forums, somebody will ask a question: can I use a 1956 F100 axle in my 1957 F100? And then you read through the replies, and you got to sift through all of them, because one guy comments, I have a 1957 F100 as well. And then another guy comments, well, you shouldn't even do that. I just did a upgraded front suspension kit. And then another guy, it's just a whole bunch of answers that are not necessary in what you're actually looking for. And what I found about AI is it'll kind of sift through all of that, and it'll just give you the answers. And it's a pretty cool feature because it just talks to you like a normal person would. So like, we had AI going, and it was talking to us about telling us the differences. And Pat said out loud, another thing we could do is measure the track width of the axles. And the AI like heard him say that and was like, yeah, that's a good idea to get a tape measure and measure the front axles to verify. It was like, it's wild. So I'm not 100% sold on it. I don't think it's the end all be all. We're still always going to use books. We have all kinds of old manuals and old Chilton books that we rely on for a lot of our information, but it is kind of fun to use it. And there's another thing that we'll talk about after this, the AI helped me with when I very first got it. So all that being said, this axle right here is the 57 axle that came out of my truck, and this is the one that has the super worn out kingpins. So these are the old kingpins that were in there. Like I said before, it already had oversized kingpins. So before we went to Bonneville last year, I bought a new kingpin kit because I knew the kingpins were worn out. So I tried to replace it then. But when I did it, I realized that it already had oversized kingpins in it. So I couldn't use the new kingpins that it came with. So what I did was I put the new bushings in here, all the new hardware, reamed out the bushings in the spindles a lot to be able to fit the oversized kingpin, and just put the old kingpins in there. But it still had a lot of slop, and it got worse and worse and worse throughout our road trip. So what the plan is with this, almost everything is the same. The track width is wider total from end to end where the kingpin's going. It's wider by 1/4 of an inch, which I don't see that being a problem for the track width. The biggest difference, if you look at this right here, the 4 holes where the U-bolts go in, the U-bolt or the spring and the U-bolt on a 57 is a little bit wider than it is on the 1956. But looking at the ham, when we read some stuff on there, they just recommended just egg out these holes a little bit to be able to get the bigger U-bolts to fit in there, and everything else should be able to fit. Another difference, which will actually work to our advantage, is the hole for the kingpin on the 1956 axle is just a little bit smaller than it is on the 1957 axle. So what our current plan and thought is, the machinist should be here at about 3 o'clock today, and he'll kind of help us verify some things. We'll get new stock size kingpins for the 57 F100, and then we'll bore out these holes to be the proper size for the stock 1957 kingpins, which would be 0.859 is how big those kingpins are. And that's good that it's smaller because it gives us some wiggle room. The holes look pretty good. The kingpins look like they were in pretty good shape. But if there is any ovaling or anything like that in these holes, we're gonna be able to bore those out a little bit and hopefully get the hole to fit nice and proper for the new kingpin. And this axle is just gonna get ditched. Unless somebody wants a very, very worn out 1957 front axle, you can have it for free. Comment down below. So that's what the current plan is for getting this whole front end together. I was a little worried there because we have 2 weeks until we go to Bonneville, and like I always do, procrastinate on everything. So I think this might be what is gonna work for us and what's gonna be able to make us get this thing done. So there's the update on the F100 going to Bonneville. Now let's move on to the discussion about what else AI helped me with recently in the shop. So we're doing a nice close-up of the inside here because the outside of this truck is being worked on, and we're going to be doing a big reveal of the difference in the look of the outside of the truck. So the biggest thing that AI helped me solve, I very first got it, and my girlfriend was showing me about it, and she's like, well, why don't you ask it a work-related question, like something that you could use for work? And so Pat and I had been trying to solve this issue. So on these early trucks, my 57 F100 is the same way. There's this whole, it's back in here. Yeah, there it is. There's this whole mess of wires that comes out for the turn signal to be able to work for the brake light as well. Because for these, it's just one 1157 bulb in the back. So you have a tail light for one filament, and then the other one is your brake light, which is also your turn signal. So in this turn signal stock, the wiring harness for it, you take your brake light and feed that into there, and it does all of its magic inside of this turn signal thing to make it to where when you turn your turn signal on, the brake light becomes flashing for the turn signal. So this truck is a custom cab and comes equipped with a cool feature. If we can zoom in right here, Pat, we see emergency warning flasher, FOMO-CO, and then this is the on-off switch for that. So that's a pretty rare feature. This thing was pretty kitted out for its day to be able to have a hazard lights at all, and it has this little indicator light that tells us when our hazard lights are on. Because of the limited wires in this wiring harness, because the turn signal and the brake light are sharing the same wire in this little wiring harness thing, the problem that we were realizing that we were going to run into was that when we would turn the hazard flasher on, our indicator light would come on. But because we didn't have a specific wire that could come off and become an indicator light only for this, we would have had to share one of the brake lights or one of the turn signal lights that was coming off. And that would have made it to where, let's say we hooked it up to our left turn signal, we turn left, and then our hazard is gonna flash. You turn right, it won't flash. Or it would have been the brakes. Whenever you push the brakes, that hazard light was gonna flash. So I'm not an electrician. I can wire a car fairly well, but I'll tell you what, that was breaking my brain on how we can, and Pat too, we both discussed it and just could not figure out how we could make that work because the flasher didn't have a separate indicator. When Pat tried to look it up on Google, he had a hard time because it was such a rare feature, and that's where we learned how rare of a feature it was. There wasn't a whole lot of literature out there, and there wasn't a whole lot of books for how to wire up specifically the hazard flasher. So I asked ChatGPT, I said, hey, I have a 1966 Ford F100, and I'm trying to wire in my hazard indicator, and I'm trying to figure out how to make it not flash with the turn signal. And it totally talked back to me, understood everything. It's like, oh yeah, that's a pretty rare feature in there. It could have been dealer installed, but it wasn't very common. Gave me a whole wiring diagram of how to wire it all up. And then it said, if you're having that issue where you don't want your indicator light to come on when you turn your turn signal on, you need to put a diode in the line so that way it doesn't backfeed and go to your indicator light. Once I heard that, I'm like, of course, how did I not think of that, to put a diode in there? But it was really cool to see how it just knew what I was talking about, knew that it was a rare feature, and instantly that fast gave me a solution to it. So back again to, I don't think it's the end all be all. I don't think it'll ever replace our books. And of course, it's never going to replace just having that knowledge and experience that you get from working on cars for a long time to be able to just instantly solve your issue. But I like to use technology when I'm restoring cars and always keep improving. So I do see how there will be more and more instances to where we use AI to help us with certain things to restore these cars. So there's another update for what we've been up to this week. I'm pretty proud of ourselves of how on it we've been saying. I always tell myself, hey, we're gonna make a YouTube video every week. But this kind of talking format, it's very easy to be able to make and put out really quick. So these have been easy for us to actually do it. So I'm pretty sure this is video number 4 that we've done every single week. What I'm gonna try and do is stay consistent as far as the day we release it. So this should be the second one in a row that we've done on Thursday. And so then next week, you should be able to expect a video on Thursday as well.